since this law came into being. And the government has consistently declined to comply with the requirement to disburse these funds, even where the parliament actually appropriates the money. Okay? Okay? But more critically, it is never appropriated. I'm sure you know. Okay? As a result of sailing, so-called, and the money you can see, we share our budget. And now it's the majority. So what has been the reason why this money is not availed? Please help us understand. If the cure is only in entrenching it in the Constitution. Finally, on my part, is the ORPP. It's a very critical office. Very critical. And in fact, if you ask me, I wouldn't mind having it entrenched in the Constitution. But it must be reminded that its purpose is to protect political parties. Because our democracy is still very young. And most of our parties are vulnerable. So they need to be protected. And the office is at the center of the protection of these parties, and indeed of multi-party democracy. What do you make of the presence of the Political Parties Liaison Committee? Do you think its role so far has been satisfactory? Do you think there are things we can do to have it strengthened? Do you think its structure is proper? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I want to agree with you that we need to consider the entrenchment of that fund in the Constitution and the office. Kenya is a multi-party democracy, but as we speak, there's a serious threat to our multi-party democracy. One way of killing multi-party democracy is starving the political parties of funding. And what Honorable Piwanda is talking about has been there. There's been quite some deliberate attempt to not to disburse the funds and therefore not to finance political parties to be effective as vehicles through which Kenya as a country can realize its political aspirations. The second threat to democracy has been the issue of cannibalization of our political parties. There's a deliberate attempt to cannibalize political parties in our country. And the Jubilee Party has been the main target, as you are aware, ODM also, and other opposition parties. And we are not just talking of the opposition, but even in the ruling coalition itself, we know that there are parties like Ford Kenya and ANC that are in danger or that are being arm-twisted to collapse into UDA. And we're in danger of actually Kenya going back to a single-party state. Now, what I want to find out is, I've looked at your presentation. I've not seen much on party hopping. And this is where we are finding members of parliament moving to another party without going back to their base or their constituencies for a fresh mandate. And this happened before. There have been proposals here on how that can be dealt with in terms of returning hygiene to our politics. And that political hygiene can come from very clear provisions that if you move from your party, you're elected on this party, on this manifesto. If you are to go to another party, then you should resign and go back to the people for fresh election. What do you say about that and the proposals in amendment of the Political Parties Act to ensure that happens? Thank you.
Thank you, ORPP. I'll just pick up from where Honorable Eugene has ended on the rights of political parties vis-a-vis individual rights. You know, our constitution has been built among the most progressive constitutions, not just in Africa, but in the world. And part of what has made this constitution to be built as the most progressive was Article 4 of the Constitution of the Bill of Rights. I want to draw reference to Article 32 on the freedom of conscience, belief and opinion, where that says that every person has a right, either individually, in community, with others, in public or in private, to manifest any religion, belief, true worship, practice, all that. and a person shall not be compelled to act or engage in any act that is contrary to that person's belief or even religion. The same article, Article 4, on freedom of association, that every person has the right to freedom of association, which includes the right to form, join, or participate in activities of an association of any kind. That includes political parties. The same constitution, in Article 38, gives Kenyans individually political rights, that you have, every citizen is free to make political choices. That vis-a-vis the question of the rights of political parties, which to me are more of corporate rights. What, in your opinion, ORPP constitutionally has a higher ranking? Is it individual political rights for me as an individual, that I have the right to associate with whoever I want to associate? Or is it the question that has been spoken to as political sanity within political parties? Can I be forced to leave my party, UDA, today because, for instance, I have associated myself with a position that the leader of minority has taken in parliament, that as an individual I have made a choice, and probably could also be a matter of belief? Would you then say that my political party UDA's rights override my individual political rights and freedoms as enshrined under Article 4 of the Constitution? 2, you have spoken about a mix of the electoral system with what you're calling proportional representation and the first past the post. I'd really want to understand how exactly would that proportional representation cure the problem that we were trying to address with a group that was ahead of you called Gamawado, on the question of one man, one vote. Agree, just one man, one vote, even without going to shilling, since you are dealing with political offices, just to ensure that there is equitable representation, because I honestly believe that there should and there must be equitable representation, so that every member of parliament represents an equal, almost equal number of constituents, not the situation that we are in today, where you find a member of parliament who has been elected by 5,000 people and has the same voting rights, the same vote as another member, for instance, a member for Ruto constituency who has been elected by 180,000 voters. And they have the same, the equality of the vote then is not there when it comes to representation. How then would this system that you're proposing of a mix cure that problem? You have something, Mheshimiwa?
Thank you very much, Chair. My name is Catherine Wambilianga, member of this committee. Though I've come in late, but I'll make a few observations having gone through your list. I am totally in agreement with your proposal of fast-tracking the constitution of the IEBC. But on the other side, you have not given the criteria categorically on how you want this proposed. You're only proposing that a member of your ORPP should be there. But what about the other criteria? And secondly, you have also given this proposal, you're backing our proposal on the 2/3 gender rule. Fine, you have said nothing about it. You have just said we do a multi-sectoral committee. Give us the proper details of what you mean by multi-sectoral. What is it, professional? What qualifications would you want to be included? Thank you.
And you don't have to give that all that now. You can still actually enrich your document after this.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So under 5 minutes, please respond.
Thank you. I will comment on a few and ask.
Sorry. There's one more issue from Honorable Kongo Mogeni.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Registrar, for your presentation. I just wanted to follow up from where Leader of Majority left, Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah, on this issue of political rights. And I think you are the right person to help us. You know how we construct our constitution. We promote its purpose, its values, its principles. Now, following from the question that has been posed by Honorable Ichung'wah, our political rights, fundamental rights, can be limited as provided for in the Constitution. One of that limitation is in Article 103. You can belong to a party, you can be elected as a member of parliament, but there is that article that is entitled the vacation of office of a member of parliament. So you can belong to a party, as Honorable Mheshimiwa Ichung'wah says, but there is a way you can lose your seat. One of them is in Article 103, sub-Article 1E, where you are deemed to have resigned from a party. And then Clause 3 says Parliament shall enact a legislation to provide circumstances under which a political party where a member will be deemed for purposes of Clause 1E to have resigned from the party. Now, you are the custodian of the enforcement of this article. I think either Section 14, if I remember well, of the political parties. Is it 14? Yes. Says if a member supports the ideology, interest, or policies of another political party, he will be deemed to have resigned from a political party. So the Constitution itself is saying if you belong to this club of a political party, you don't support its ideology, its policies, you are deemed to have resigned. So, Madam Registrar, we are here, this forum is discussing issues of discipline, political parties, party hopping. We are now multi-party democracy. You can exercise your rights under Article 38. If you are not happy with the political party A, it's not like in Kano days where we had one party. You can quit, go back to the people, you will get your political rights, your belief, your conscience, you win through another party. The person to help us is you. Have you tried to enforce Article 14, or have you found yourself in circumstances where you are supposed to enforce Section 14 as read with Article 103, so that you help us in maintaining discipline within political parties? 2, I support you. You need to be entrenched in the Constitution. Have you faced intimidation or pressure from either the current government or even the previous government in discharging your functions under Article 103 and Section 14? Then finally, you have mentioned the critical role that agents play, and we are doing this for posterity, not for UDA, not for Azimio. This is just for posterity. On the issue of political agents, I like your proposal. We should restrict them to either a political party or independent candidates. Do you think there would be wisdom if we proposed that agents be picked by political parties, but budgetary allocation to pay them be part of the mandate of IEBC, so that Parliament here can appropriate money for paying agents, the parties pick, but IEBC pays them? Do you think that is something you can support? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Proceed, please.
Thank you. I will really talk about a few issues, and then I'll leave as my assistant registrars also to talk on the others. Let me start with the one of the political parties fund, was by Honorable Wadai. It is true that we have never realized the 0.3% since the inception of the fund in 2007. But I want to note that the fund has been growing over time, and giving in my tenure in the Office of Registrar of Political Parties. When I joined the office, I made 370 million as the political parties fund for everything. Right now, we are close to 1.5 billion, meaning every year we have been growing the fund, and government has tried Treasury has been growing the fund, and government and appropriation in Parliament also. But we are not yet there because our proposals are usually around 5 billion. Yeah, so it means we are not yet there. But we appreciate the fact that the fund has been growing over time. The reason why we are proposing the 0.3 to be entrenched into the Constitution is because there has been several attempts by different people, activists, wanting to remove even the 0.3. They say it's too much. But from where we sit, we think once it says entrenched in the Constitution, probably that many attempts, and it's not once, but it's severally, attempts for people going to court and wanting the 0.3 to be reconsidered so that it moves. That is the reason. But I think it's not the only reason why we can realize the 0.3. There's also commitment and also improvement of economy. We all know that sometimes we don't have adequate funds for everything. That's why we appreciate any time the fund is grown. So our proposal to the government of the day is to at least have a commitment every year. We are adding some money on top of what is there so that progressively we capture it in our budget and we realize that in the perception of the fiscal year and the problems, probably financial problems, inadequate funds that we could be facing. The other issue I wanted to respond to is the talked about cannibalization of political parties. But I want to first of all, the cannibalization is not done by the registrar of political parties. It is actually the cannibalization happens within the political class, outside the office of registrar of political parties. So you have little to do when people are cannibalizing each other outside you, but when they actually are alive, as we apply the requirement of the law, and we cannot hold politics by the neck, because politics must happen out there, and we cannot really come and regulate individual behaviors and how people want to come together. However, we have an obligation as an institution to check what the party, and you can see we are saying we need commitment from political parties themselves and political class to follow their own constitution, their own policies, and the Political Parties Act. Because sometimes, even when so much has been done, you realize that what the parties are telling you to do as the register of political parties it is not even in their constitution, or it's not even in the Political Parties Act. They are taking you to a direction, and then you are attacked when you actually do not go that direction. But our commitment is to the law, your own party constitution, and also the requirement of the Political Parties Fund. So as far as politics is happening out there, I do not, indeed, most of the time, we let politics happen because we are not politicians ourselves. So when carbonization on number one day is happening out there, sometimes it's wrong to blame the regulator. Probably try to sort it from a political point of view outside there. I think that is our comment, which I know. And in regards to party hopping, I think the law is very clear. To us, once somebody has been elected on a particular party, there must be, if you want to move, then there must be the required regulations and laws on how you move from one political party to another, on how you move from one coalition to another. And that's what we have been enforcing. You tell us you want to move from one coalition to another, we tell you this is what you agreed at the coalition level. So if you don't fulfill the requirement of that coalition, then we tell you you have not moved. Then we require you to do what you are required to do. Then we allow you to move from one coalition to another, or from one party to another. The other issue I want to comment before I give Mr. Ariel Florence to finish up is the issue of the election system that we are proposing. What is it supposed to cure? Number one, we have seen during this presentation Kenyans coming and saying we want to even create more counties because we feel in the counties that we are in, we are underrepresented, or we are not able because our numbers are not enough. So what this is going to cure, when you make party list based on a region, and we can elaborate that further, it means those people who are not been able to be elected, they have no constituency, for example. So they will never actually fight their way to parliament, whichever way, because their numbers cannot constitute a constituency. Then it means using party list and you do regional list, you are able to capture those people who are outside the past the post positions. And then through the voting through party list, then you are bringing them to parliament. And that's why we are saying that is one method, how you can cure the problem of people who feel very underrepresented, the minorities in this country, who can never make a constituency to end up in parliament. That is one thing. It is also cure the issue of two-third gender rule. That is where you can put women, that's where you can put the youth, you can balance the vote, so that finally you finish. And then thirdly, it's going to strengthen political parties, because political parties will propose those lists, and then political parties will be voted for. So even if a political party is not among the first and the second, it will still have a chance to have people coming from the list being elected and going to parliament through the party list. So it has, to us, it has a lot. But we are not saying we remove the first past the post and where the constituencies are, you remain with that, then make regional list, and every vote will count. It will actually reduce wastage of vote. You can tell me those parties that get votes to the extent of even 3 million, 5 million, those votes go to waste. They don't count, because they don't even count in political parties funding. They don't qualify, they don't count anywhere. So the wastage in elections in terms of vote will be minimized. Yeah, so that's why we are proposing it can cure many other things. So allow me to study.
Lucy, before you go to Ali, how does it cure equitable representation? How does it cure the problem of rural constituency, for instance, with 180,000 registered voters and a higher population being represented by one member of parliament, while another constituency that I will name, a member is elected by 5,000 people?
Yeah, Mr. Ali will comment about that, but because there is the regionally made, we are looking after the elections, we are looking at a region, how many votes is the region, because we are saying, let's even do away with the closed party list. First of all, we are doing away with the closed party list. So after elections, it's when you look at the votes, the vote distribution. So because the lists are per region, then you distribute within the region. So you are capturing also the number of votes that have been cast in a particular region. Yeah, but Mr. Ali, please comment also about that.
Right. Thank you very much, co-chairs and members of the committee. Just 3 issues. Number one is the issue of cannibalization. I think I want to say one thing about that. Basically, we are in this space, and the political landscape, of course, shows that there are a lot of wrangles within the parties. We might not call it cannibalization, but wrangles. And what we have seen is some of these issues result as a result of lack of internal democracy and lack of strong leadership. So as an office, we are building capacities of parties to have concrete ideologies, strong leadership, and internal democracy, which calls for inclusive decision making. Once that happens within political parties, then it becomes very difficult to infiltrate those parties, even by members, those who are not members of that party. So we're advocating for inclusive decision making by political parties, internal democracy, strong leadership, and a concrete ideology that all members of that party identify with. Once we have that, then it becomes very difficult for any party to be infiltrated and hence probably cannibalized. The issue of individual rights versus political rights, which was raised by Honorable Chungwa, I think Honorable Mogeni has touched on it. Whatever we wanted in terms of those rights, the Constitution also has mandated Parliament to come up with laws on management of political parties and those positions, and also it's one of the ways in which one loses seat. But what is important, and what we have seen in other jurisdictions, is that parties sometimes also give room for individual members to follow their conscience, provided that it is not very far from what the party believes in. So the individual consciousness of a member, which must also be respected by the party. In other jurisdictions, party usually ask every member, when they're elected, to give about 3 or 4 matters that they think are very close to them, that even if the party takes a different position, they will not be punished. If they take a different position from the party position, they will not be punished. And they usually declare that. So if we have that kind of a scenario, then we might also promote some individual consciousness of members who are also representing their voters. So there need to be that balance between political party position and individual members' consciousness, which sometimes is also very, very important to be considered. So deeming only comes when you outright oppose the party ideology on all positions, not just because of one matter or two which you followed your conscience. I think that is also covered by the Constitution. In the issue of the issue of freedom of association and rights, I think that has been captured very well. It's also a constitutional issue. And finally, the issue about the agents. I think we don't have an issue with that proposal. Agents are recognized as poll officials in the Elections Act, but also in the Political Parties Act, there are some mandate for which is given to the RPP for training of agents, because again they are coming from political parties. So that balance is important. If the government is able to fund, then it's a good proposal to promote democracy. They say democracy is expensive. So if it's possible, it can be done. Thank you.
Thank you, co-chairs and members of the committee. I'll quickly pick on about 2 of the questions and seek to respond to them. I'll pick on the question on Political Parties Liaison Committee, PPLC, and whether as an office we think that PPLC has been effective and properly constituted, as well as its current structure. PPLC is properly envisaged in the Political Parties Act under Section 38 as a forum of dialogue, a tripartite forum of dialogue between IBC or PP and the political parties. And in this case, we're talking about the fully registered political parties, including coalition political parties. Yes, it's important because previously we have used this particular forum to discuss and to engage on important cross-cutting issues ranging between political processes, including electoral processes and political parties management. And we've been able to discuss with political party leadership because a political party is represented by 1 member in PPLC. And yes, we've made resolutions and we've been able to even strengthen governance of political parties through this particular forum. And as it is, I would say yes, it is structured well because we have all the political parties represented, and we have the steering committee of PPLC. Within PPLC, we have the steering committee, which brings together all the fully registered political parties so that they also have a platform, a forum, to discuss issues on the part of the political parties, and then now brings into the bigger picture of PPLC, or PP and IBC. However, the challenge we have noted with PPLC, number 1, it is the issue of funding, that the PPLC is not expressly financed and funded. Every time we have developed programs for PPLC, of course, with the steering committee of PPLC, we realize that the allocation given for their budget is very minimal. So a lot of the programs and activities that they would undertake and realize, the spirit of PPLC is not really realized. So it is our wish that then PPLC gets properly funded so that it can be effective by implementing the priority programs that they always come up with but not funded. Number two is the representation of political parties in PPLC. We see that political parties are strongly represented when they are not in parliament. But the parties that are in parliament really would wish to see elected members in parliament, in Senate, coming to PPLC and representing their parties in PPLC and being able to articulate issues of their parties, even to the extent that they can be escalated to either Senate or to Parliament, so that proper legislation can be done that impacts on political parties and also electoral processes as escalated from PPLC. But we do not see that either, because the members who sit in those political parties are not in touch with their members in Parliament, and therefore effective legislation therefore of issues from PPLC is not realized. So those are some of the issues that we believe if they're dealt with, then we could actually strengthen PPLC and we would see the real spirit being realized in the country of the formation of PPLC. The other issue I wanted to touch on is the issue of deeming Section 14 of the Political Parties Act, and to say that while Article 92 of the Constitution under sub-article 3 that Parliament will make legislation, we see that legislation under Article 14 with regard to deeming of any errant political party member, especially those that are elected, but of course generally all the members. So parties who have attempted to deem members, and they have actually written to the office of the registrar for the expulsion of their members through the deeming process, you realize that they don't follow the due process, because the due process is clearly prescribed in the Act, Section 14. But I believe if they follow the due process, including according those members a fair hearing, then the office of the registrar would have no problem concluding that process. But we urge parties that they should also observe the due process. Then quickly, the issue of strengthening of ORPP. Yeah, for sure, we are not seeking this for purposes of ourselves. We have a single term of 6 years as the current office holders, and we could be very comfortable and leaving it at that. But we have a duty to make sure that this office is strengthened because of the place value it has in the strengthening of democracy in this country. And therefore, one, we seek that it be enshrined in the Constitution, not because there's been any pressure, but we believe that it rightfully belongs there, and therefore it should be entrenched there. But also, number two, the mandate, so that it can be able to effectively deliver its mandate within the space of the statutes. I would have added some more, but allow me to stop there in the interest of time. Thank you so much.
Please do.
Thank you so much. Chair, let me conclude by saying we appreciate the invite and to appear before you. Allow me only to really weigh on that issue of political rights of individuals versus those ones of a party. We other jurisdiction, and we really benchmark with others. In Europe, the parties come out with what they call programs. And when you are joining a political party or being elected under a political party, you commit to that program, that our party, in issues of taxes, we stand for this. In issues of women's rights, we stand for this. In issues of this, so that when later you come to tell me I am going outside the party, at least there's a reference that I committed to certain things. Because as Mr. Ari said, there must be a balance between political rights of a party and also political rights of an individual and political rights of the people who elected the member. Because this member is also representing a constituency. So that constituency also have a right to tell how, he has a right to go and consult with the with the members of a constituency. So those are three things, Chairman, that must be balanced. The representative, the party interest through the party programs and what people committed to the individual member, and also the rights of the people who elected this person, the constituent, so that he can also consult the constituents and say, this is the way our member, my people want me to represent them. I think that balance must be created. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Registrar. Maybe moving forward, what you should do is probably guide now political parties on how to do those programs and make proposals of what legislative interventions would be done for those party programs to be there. So that as I run for a seat on UDA, this is what I subscribe to.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. We have heard you, all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So next we have Attorney General Emeritus, Professor Gido Muigai. Who is also an old boy of the school. You used to beat us in rugby.
Thank you very much, Chairman and members. Thank you for inviting me. I have very few words because you have directed me to the specific issues that you would like me to pronounce myself on. And subject to any further directions, I want to go straight to that agenda.
Please do.
The first question that you put to me relates to the question of restructuring IEBC and the audit of the 2022 elections. First, I would like to state that it's been my very unfortunate duty to be involved in the reconstitution of IEBC previously, a process that was very, very difficult for all the parties involved. I remember that we disbanded the entire IEBC, sent them home, and we started afresh. I would personally be against institutionalizing that kind of thing. I do not support creating a permanent state of instability in institutions. For example, we have reconstituted the judiciary twice. And I think that some good gains were made by that process, but I think that that process created some inherent instability in the institution itself. But I'm not here to talk about the judiciary. I'm here to talk about IEBC. We have tried several methods of constituting IEBC. When, Mr. Chairman, you recall, we came out of the crisis of the 80s, and we had IPPG. It was thought that what we should do is to allow political parties to nominate individual members into the IEBC. It was an unmitigated disaster. It was an unmitigated disaster. And I don't think we should be tempted again to allow party participation in the appointment of commissioners. I believe myself that we need an independent, robust process of recruitment. At the present, I am not very sure that the system in place is giving us our best first 11. Now, how can we strengthen it? I think that, for example, when they say the Law Society of Kenya, my own professional body, is to send a representative, I am not very sure that that necessarily creates autonomy. Or when they say religious leaders will have a representatives, or trade union leaders, and so on and so forth. I think we need to find a way of forming that constitutive body that will interview those who qualify for these positions. I agree with those who say that there is no legal reason why the chairman should be a lawyer, because the election is more than a legal process. It's a management process, and what we want to do is be able to elect into the commission good managers, strong managers, proven managers, who then can hire the best lawyers that they can, either within the secretariat itself or from outside the secretariat, hopefully whom they can be able to pay. Number two, should we go back to ask ourselves what happened in the 2022 election? My own honest opinion is that it is not a useful exercise. Why is it not useful? Because again, it reopens the question that has been resolved with finality by the Supreme Court. The challenge with reopening matters that have been judicially settled is that you, by necessary implication and inadvertently, you create the possibility that confidence in that institution can be eroded. And I don't think that that would give us, in going forward, it would create a permanent state of electoral instability, because no matter who would win or lose, no matter what the Supreme Court would say, that party would say, we know. In fact, in that year, the Supreme Court said this, but when we did a forensic audit, the forensic audit produced a different outcome. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, that the work of the Supreme Court, is not to declare that the election was conducted without a hitch. That is not the standard. It is not to find whether there was any hitch. In fact, since I started participating in these elections in 2013, before the Supreme Court, 10 years ago, the Supreme Court has always said there was a hitch. There was a hitch. But the standard of the law is, was there a hitch of such a substantial nature that it affected the outcome of the election? And in 4 of the cases I participated in, the answer was no. In 1, the Supreme Court said, yes, this is not good. This is not a hitch. This has gone beyond a hitch. I didn't agree with them then, but I respected that opinion and I obeyed it. And as the Attorney of the Republic, I went back and started arranging for a new election, which we did hold thereafter. One of the problems we have, ladies and gentlemen, in these constitutional timelines that are locked up in the Constitution, it confirms what the philosopher said, that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. When we wrote the Constitution here in Bomas, we thought that putting timelines in which by which the court must determine the dispute, we were making sure that the country would be stable, that a transition would be done quickly. We were wrong. It now turns out, in my experience, that this time is not enough. And this method that we use, this method that is by documents only, by affidavits only, and so on, is not enough. So that's one thing that if we were to reopen that process, that is one area that the experts would probably need to look at, the timelines. In fact, we almost ran into a constitutional crisis in 2017. We dodged a bullet by the sheer love of God, because Parliament had broken up, had prorogued, Parliament had gone home, it couldn't make more law, it couldn't make law to guide us, and the judges had found the night before the election that election officers had been wrongly appointed. It took the Court of Appeal sitting at night to deal with that technical problem. Where the life of the nation is concerned, we don't want those near hits. We then went into an election where I think had we missed the timeline, there would have been no government, and that's the constitution we have. If the election is not, for example, if we do an election, the Electoral Commission declares a presidential winner, a petition is filed, members of the Supreme Court are kidnapped, we do not hear the petition and finalize it within the period provided, then we have no government. I think these are very dangerous propositions, and we want to have a more flexible system. And I know there are many experts who can help us deal with that. So that's all I wish to say about IEBC, about reopening the question. About boundaries delimitation, I want to start by saying that my own personal view, which is not a view shared by many of my countrymen, is that we have too many people in Parliament. We have too many constituencies, so that we should be reducing constituencies, not increasing. We have too many counties. We should reduce counties, not increase counties. They are costing us a lot of money, and quite a number of them are not viable. When we were in Bomas, the constitution we gave you, ladies and gentlemen of the Honorable August House of Parliament, I think we had given you 9 counties. 14, I'm corrected, 14. It was when the politicians went to Naivasha that they came to this compromise of let's go to 41. I think if we are to reopen this constitution, one of the issues we can usefully reopen is the reduction of counties. Bring more counties together and let them work together and mobilize resources together and share together. So I'm not a great fan of increasing counties or indeed of increasing constituencies. And this may bring me then to another issue which I was supposed to take later. This issue of the gender rule, we call it the gender rule, but essentially, really, it is the women empowerment rule. I struggled with it when I was the Attorney of the Republic, and we came to grief. For as many bills as we worked on, we came to grief. And I want to be very, very honest with you. First, there is a feeling among many Kenyans that we have not done enough to justify this. Our social education around this has not been successful, and we need to do some more civic education around why empowering women has the effect of empowering the whole community in the long run, well, let's say in the medium term. What would be my solution about this? Of all the ones we have tried, I think only one can succeed, and that is to abolish the woman seat, to abolish the seat of the woman representative completely, and then to create 2 seats in every constituency, one for a woman and one for a man. In fact, we end up with 50% being women. We improve. We do better than the 30% that we already have. And that one is neat. It is achievable without much mathematics, arithmetics, and it is straightforward. That would be my proposal. There is an issue you put to me, honorable members, that is...
Sorry, Prof, sorry. You said 290 times 2. Yes. That's how many? 580?
Oh, you know, my original proposal is that we reduce the constituencies. So we would first reduce the constituencies, then have, to about 100 constituencies, then have 1 man, 1 woman in each of those 100 constituencies.
Give us 200.
Yes. Yes. And the office and status of a member of parliament will be restored. There is one issue, ladies and gentlemen, honorable members, you asked me to talk about, and that is the issue of socio-economic rights, which is the issue of the cost of living. This is a chicken and egg problem that is, in my view, very, very hard to. We need the economy to function at a certain level in order to produce goods and services that allow us to distribute. It is the legendary Tom Mboya in the ideological debates of the 60s that he held with senior Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. And the grand old man, Jaramogi, was talking about distributing wealth. And Tom Mboya kept reminding him, we need to create the wealth first. That problem is alive today as it was in the 1960s. We need to create wealth in order to distribute it. And therefore, socio-economic rights are economic rights. Socio-economic rights are important fundamental rights in the Constitution. But we need to fund them. In order to respect them, we need to be able to fund them. So we need the economy to grow. We are in a chicken and egg position. We need the economy to grow in order for us to fund socioeconomic rights. The economy is not growing, therefore we are not funding. So that is the problem. That is the problem. Because no matter which government is in control, our envelope, our financial envelope is the same. And as long as that envelope is not growing, we will not be able. We will not be able to give free meals in schools, which, as many of you know, that would be a big game changer. Because our students sometimes perform very poorly because they haven't eaten. They just haven't had a good meal. They can't stay awake in the class, and so on. So if we could fund that, it would be a huge game changer. To fund it is a huge budgetary item. And I could go to many other important socioeconomic concerns. So my suggestion is that we need to progressively enforce socioeconomic rights, progressively, and in the communities that deserve them the most. We used to say that the majesty of French law is that it treats the king in his castle the same way it treats the beggar in the street. That cannot be a very good law, can it? We cannot treat everybody equally because not everybody is in the same circumstances. When we enforce socioeconomic laws, we must start with the most vulnerable, so that the most vulnerable are attended to first, with the most basic needs, so that they can live a minimum dignity that is accorded to them. Now, let me say something about, I've talked about the two-thirds. This issue of defecting from political parties, this also is as old as our history, honorable members. In fact, the first thing that happened after independence, on the anniversary of independence and on the birth of the republic, is that people crossed floors. KADU crossed the floor. KADU was the opposition. It crossed the floor. I think the last man who was left screaming and kicking was Joseph Martin Shikuku. And I remember at that time, from the reading I have done, there wasn't a lot of noise about the democratic character of crossing the floor. But in '66, when KPU was formed and KPU crossed the floor, the very erudite Joseph Thomas Mboya was very, very, very critical. He was saying to cross the floor is to lose the mandate of the party that elected you. Now, and I have a sympathy. Yes, please. I have sympathy for that. I think that we should have in law mechanisms of containing persons to the parties to the parties on whose platform they were elected. So that's my opinion on that. Now, what is the last issue?
It's not clear, sorry. Yeah. Just make it clear. What is your position on that?
My position is that if I presented myself to the people of Kamukunji as a member of the Kenya African National Union, and I was elected as such, I should be obligated, if I am to continue for the 5 years, to retain fidelity to that party, the party on whose platform I was elected. If I crossed the floor and became, in fact, and voted with and became associated with the Kenya African Democratic Union, then I should vacate my seat and a by-election should be held. That's my opinion. It is not a popular opinion, I know, among politicians. However, you told me to come and talk about my opinion. Let me now tell you an even more unpopular, let me give you a more unpopular view, and it is my last one. I do not believe, as a constitutional lawyer and historian, that there is any justification for any fund. There is no justification for the Constituency Development Fund. There is no justification for Affirmative Action Fund, and there is no justification for Senate Override Fund. We have one government at two levels. We have a national government. The fund of the national government is in the Treasury. It is kept by the National Cabinet Secretary to the Treasury. The second fund is the governor, is in the county. It is kept by the governor. Any other fund has no place in our constitutional architecture. There should be only money in two levels: the national level and the county level. Let me tell you why I have another difficulty with this. I have another difficulty with our members of parliament, our honorable members of parliament, becoming both the appropriators of fund, debating the budget, appropriating cash, then following the cash themselves, yes, and spending the cash. I think it blurs the roles, because the work of parliament is to tax and to spend, then to oversight, right? So I don't feel very comfortable when the member of parliament has fought very hard for money to go to Kiambu County. Then before it arrives, it finds him sitting in the constituency. So that is a personal view, but one that I hold very strongly. I would like to see my senator and my member of parliament oversighting, calling, and I have seen the Senate, for example, is very, very, very robust on this role, and I think that's the correct role. Says to the governor, this is the report we have received, tell us how you spent this money. If the senator was down there himself spending some money, I think the ability to ask another spender how he spent might be compromised. So unfortunately, I don't support that. Now, finally, do I oppose the setting up of the office of leader of the official opposition? No, I don't oppose at all. Actually, I think it makes politics neater. It makes politics neater. It keeps this general closer to his troops, or to her troops for that matter. The truth is, in a democracy, the opposition is a government in waiting. And therefore, in fact, the opposition has shadow cabinet ministers. So they should be operating in parliament, shadowing the other cabinet minister, asking them questions that are informed and that help to show that this party at the next election, they are ready. They are ready to be the government. They are responsible, they are organized, and that is their general there, the leader of the official opposition. And he is accorded all due. In a democracy, the leader of the opposition actually has such high level of security clearance that he is briefed. He is briefed the same way the president is briefed. If there are national security questions, he is briefed. If there are internal threats, external threats, he is briefed. If they are visiting delegations and so on, the leader of the opposition is briefed. So that, and that is why in a democracy we call it the royal opposition, the loyal opposition. The opposition is not a hostile. It's not a hostile group of people. It is part and parcel of government. It is loyal. The opposition is loyal to the government of the day. Because after the next election, chances are that the opposition will be the government and the government will be the opposition. That's the way it should work. Finally, the Prime Cabinet Secretary, I have no problem with that. I think it is a way of organizing cabinet to make it more efficient, to make it more... I found out in my time in the cabinet that cabinet works best if the committee systems work. But the committee systems are very difficult to organize if there isn't somebody who is chairing them, bringing them together and supervising them. The president cannot do that. is very busy. The Vice President is very busy deputizing. And by default, I did find at one point, when we had a very, very heavy legislative agenda immediately after the new constitution, I found myself playing that role, bringing people to the state law office and organizing around the legislation that we had. So I would have no difficulty with that at all. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I spoke for too long. Your Excellency, Honorable Dr. Kalonzo, you were not here before, so I would like to acknowledge you. And that's my presentation.
Thank you very much, Professor, for that very incisive engagement with quite a number of unpopular views, with as you said, with the political class. And maybe on a light note, is that how the case on NGCDF was lost in court when you were AG?
Well, it was lost in the Supreme Court after I had left. By the way, when I was there, and this my colleagues on the left will confirm, a lawyer never argues his opinion. He argues his instructions. When the case first started, my instructions from the government of the day was to support CDF, and we supported CDF. Now, today I'm speaking as a citizen.
Well, I want to be the first to go, Prof, and to tell you how pleased I am to see you this morning and to listen to your very candid views about issues that are confronting us as a country and which we find are engaging the mandate of this committee. So thank you for volunteering to come and hear us, and we'll hear you. One of the things that I would want to have your views on is, we know our bicameral nature of legislature, the National Assembly and the Senate. Occasionally, we have instances of sibling rivalry. So you get the feeling the Senate is being sat upon by the National Assembly, and of course the chair of the Parliamentary Service Commission happens to be the Speaker of the National Assembly. So what would be your view? I once visited Nigeria to see a friend who was a Speaker of the Senate, because they'd invited me to the National Prayer Breakfast, the first edition of the same in Nigeria. His name was David. And he was, because the Speaker of the Senate, he was the chair of the bicameral legislature. David Mack was his name. And I find that personally, because of what you said, the oversight role of the Senate, even in our country, seems to be more defined as presently constituted than, forgive me, majority leader and minority leader, the National Assembly, than it is in the case of the National Assembly. What would be your view? Wouldn't we probably just be candid about this? As you've been candid about the funds, you don't like them, and it is very, very clear. That's my number one comment. The next one is, it has to do with rights. I'm sure you are a preeminent lawyer, human rights, I'm sure is also within your province, constitutional law notwithstanding. If you give a people a constituency, and then they hear that this committee, in its wisdom or lack of it, has come up with recommendations to do away with 190 constituencies, wouldn't you think that is disenfranchising
people. And the more practical thing is, in fact, when the boundaries delimitation team is in place, we'll be hearing them. You'll be hearing people saying, we want, because the closer the administration is, the closer the member of parliament is to the people, the MCA, the better it is. Because the maxim, you know, there can be no taxation without representation. And this issue of taxation, I don't know whether you really dealt with it, the high cost of living. Eugene, I'm sure if he gets a time, he'll be able to address you extensively on that. Because you said the role of the MP is to tax and then to collect revenue, tax, and then oversight. This is the ideal situation. So on those 2 points, I really would want to gain your wisdom. And as I said, it's so good to see you again. I was Vice President when you were Attorney General, and clearly this country owes you plenty. I thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. AG, we will ask you to be noting the questions we take around, then you will answer. And maybe I'll go second round before I give the Honorable Pio and I, Hassan Omar, then Honorable Eugene Omaro. And Wambilianga will close for us. For Mugen will not have any. You spoke on the question of the constitution of IEBC, and you did indicate that the IPPG model was what you described as an unmitigated disaster for the country. And you seem to prefer the professional mode of appointment of IPPG. I just want clarification whether that would be what has been proposed by one of the professional organizations as going for a professional sort of human resource consultant to recruit the commissioners, or the current model that we have where you have a panel that then goes to look out for professionals through a competitive process. I want to hear your view on that. What, in your view, would be that professional model to use? Then, in reconstituting that IEBC, from your experience as AG, because you say you are involved in the reconstitution of IEBC, and I believe the time you were AG, it was a panel model that was used, as it still is in the laws today. Do you think that panel system as it is today sufficiently covers all stakeholders, or are there stakeholders that you feel we would be able to incorporate in that panel system? Opio?
Thank you very much, and I'll be very quick. AG, just on the same issue of the IPPG. In fact, I was rather surprised when you described the IPPG as unmitigated disaster. Unmitigated disaster, just to use your words. And yet we know for sure that every time we have reconstituted the IBC, or electoral body for that matter, it has been in response to a political situation. If you agree with me.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I do.
Then how this IPPG, from my recollection, was meant to address a political situation then, in 1997. Remember, it came at the backdrop of the clamor for reforms. And the mantra then was no reforms, no elections. And it's also documented that the Electoral Commission that was born out of the IPPG supervised the 1997 elections. Okay? But it went ahead to supervise the 2002 elections. That has been billed as one of the best elections in this country. So then, and in fact, what happened thereafter is what perhaps would have led to a disaster, if I'm not wrong. Because in I think 2005 or thereabout, the then president when at the expiry of the term of the Electoral Commission, then the IPPG Electoral Commission, unilaterally appointed commissioners to the commission against the wishes of the opposition, very strong wishes of the opposition. And the rest, as they say, is history. What followed then, you know. Then, what then would motivate you to describe IPPG wholesome as a disaster? Just let me understand. Yet, from where I sit, I thought it was one of the best approaches to dealing with the issue of inclusivity and consensus building. Two, you say you don't agree at all with the matter of revisiting the presidential elections of 2022. But it won't be helpful, it will be futile, to paraphrase you. But what do you make of the clear provision of Article 88, Sub-Article 4H of the Constitution, which requires, let me just read, I don't know, perhaps, which requires the IBC to facilitate the observation, monitoring, and evaluation of elections. Elections, all types of elections, whether presidential, parliamentary, ward, and so on and so forth. From where we sit, we know the IBC has been able to facilitate the observation and monitoring of the 2022 elections. So far as the evaluation of those elections is concerned, nothing of the sort has been done. Would you be opposed to the evaluation of the elections as contemplated in Article 88 4H? Last, you say you have got no problem with the creation of the office of leader of opposition. And you seem to suggest that the officer could sit in parliament. But you don't clarify further whether you want this office created within the framework of a parliamentary system, or presidential system, or some sort of hybrid system. Thank you.
Okay, Omar. Thank you very much. My recollection is that probably the 1997 elections was by far one of the most violent, and they were actually mitigated by the IPPG Electoral Commission. Number two, I think there should be we are not revisiting the Supreme Court decision. That is settled. I do not think we want to create an impression, at least from our side, that we are in any way reopening the Supreme Court verdict or process. We are though open to listening to whether there is a process of auditing the processes so that we continue to improve on the systems and electoral management, but not to revisit in any way the decision of the Supreme Court. But my actual fundamental question to you is on the issue of the ECOSOC rights, economic, social, cultural rights that you articulated yourself to. You know, our Constitution talks in many regards about social justice. And there's a very radical understanding of what social justice is to make those who are worse off better off before those who are better off become well off. So there are those who are better off who are earning taxes or who are earning salaries, and you're asking them to support housing projects for the vulnerable. You're asking them to pay 2.75% to fund affordable and accessible healthcare under the UHC program. That is part of the dictates of the Constitution, that these programs cannot wait under the classical capitalism, that we first, all of us, make wealth before we start to disperse wealth. It must go concurrently. As we are making wealth, we must disperse wealth, and we must disperse part of these advantages that come to protect or to cushion the people at the lowest prism of our society. That's why if you see part of the taxations that is being proposed, it is largely to fund economic and social rights, housing, healthcare, and the such and the such. So that those who have a little more are told to make a small sacrifice, so that those who have nothing are put to a level that they are better off before all of us can become well off. It's actually the constitutional mechanics. So I wanted to slightly you to speak to it, whether this social democracy or democratic socialism, as it is called, isn't about expanding the tax for those who have more and possibly helping those who have less. This outcry, when you are setting up universal health care, when you are setting up housing programs, were outcries that we even saw in the United States when Obamacare was trying to, find a footing, or other social programs were trying to find a footing. The last one, you talked, Opia, you were told you are a government in waiting. The only problem of the opposition is they don't want to wait. But I do agree that Kimani Ichung'wah, as leader of majority, can have a relationship where, in matters of national security, there can be a certain nexus of briefing between the two parties, so that time and again people are appraised with matters of state. The one or two of your radical opinions, but because I'm also in that space of politics, are very popular with me internally, but I cannot express open support for it. I just do believe that there should be clear separations of power, but if this committee should so decide to, as constitutional as the funds, I shall support that position.
I think, Hassan, you have to be bold as you can be in some of these things. We'll hear now Honorable Eugene.
Thank you very much, Prof. I think on the issues of electoral justice, there has been an issue about the last general election, and there are those who have described it as one of the best elections, or one of the most credible elections. But for some of us, we believe this was one of the most incredible elections. Incredible is a good thing. We had never seen a situation.
I think Hassan should put off his microphone.
We had never seen a situation where the electoral body is split. It's like a split jury, or almost a hung jury, but in this case, the majority of the commissioners disowned the results. The chairman, with the minority, only 2, upheld the results. And the country found itself in a political and legal terra incognita. It's an unprecedented situation. That's why I'm saying it was not normal. They were not normal elections. And we were particularly looking at the provisions of Article 138, 3C, and the Supreme Court pronounced itself on it by saying the decision of the Commission, IEBC, should be a corporate decision in terms of the results, tallying, verifying. It should be a corporate, it cannot be the decision of the chair. And when you come to, of course, Article 138.10, the chair is the one who declares. But in a situation where we have a rogue chair, this time we have the chair and only 2 commissioners. But we can find ourselves in a situation in future where the chair disagrees with the commission, and the chair by himself declares results that probably the rest of the commission does not agree with. The Supreme Court was very clear in interpreting that particular article, that we find, and I quote this ruling, we find that the chairperson cannot arrogate himself the power to verify and tally the results of a presidential election to the exclusion of the other members of the commission, Indeed, Article 138(10) of the Constitution, although the power to declare the results of a presidential election after verification and tallying is vested in the chairperson, he does not, or he does so only as a delegate of the commission, with the corporate decision of the commission. Going into the future, we would like to get your opinion on that in terms of advice in putting the country on a more political and legal terra firma in terms of such situations arising in future. What would you advise on that? On the issue of the cost of living, as His Excellency Kalonzo has said, these socioeconomic rights under Article 43 also include the rights under Article 201 on the finance, the taxation, and the equitable taxation of the citizens, and equitable sharing of the tax burden. In the current situation today in this country, there are many Kenyans who cannot put food on the table because of the high cost of living, and particularly the Finance Act 2023 that saw everything going up, particularly the cost of fuel. On fuel alone, we have almost 16 or so levies and taxes that have really increased fuel to unprecedented levels. And we are not talking of just the mamambogas in the village who have to pay over 33 shillings more for kerosene out there in the village. Life is becoming unbearable. Even our journalists here and professionals, anyone with a pay slip today is really an endangered species because of the many taxes. What would you advise? There have been proposals here, and we wanted to hear from you because it is a policy decision, and enjoyment of those socioeconomic rights under Article 43, it's not a favor from the government. Under Article 21, it is the fundamental duty of the state to ensure enjoyment of those rights by the citizen. In terms of policy measures, so if there are wrong policies that have been put in place that have overburdened the citizen, what would you advise in terms of probably reduction of some of the taxes or reviewing of some of those levies on fuel, on electricity? We really would like to hear from you so that we can, as a committee, make appropriate recommendations. Thank you.
Go on. Yeah, I think
Catherine was to go first.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Professor, for your presentations. I am one of those who is actually going to agree with you on most of your popular presentations. These are very unpopular amongst politicians, but to some of us, they're very popular. I first want to associate myself with your comment on the 2022 elections and the presidential results. Actually, for the first time, compared to 1997, 2013, 2017, the 2022 was less problematic. This is just the simple reason. On the ballot and on the final day, actually Uhuru was whitewashed at the ballot so badly that he quickly conceded. And next, we also look at one other very unpopular point, and this is a very great idea, where on very fair basis, let us abolish the seat of women rep and create 2 seats in every constituency. The only biggest undoing with that point is the reduction of the constituencies. Is there a way, Senior Professor, which you can modify that point in such a manner that instead of reducing, let us look at a way and get us a way, give us a formula, I know with your wisdom you can, of which we can have these 2 seats, 1 man and 1 woman, introduced in every constituency. And popular as it is, that is the best point that I've had in the better day of today. And clearly, it is clear you have said empowering a woman is like empowering the whole society. So I'm sure if the 2/3 gender rule was to take off, that is the best solution. And I even beg that this committee adopts that kind of policy. Thank you.
Okama.
Thank you. Chairman, first, you know, having listened to Prof, I'm one of those proud Kenyans who were taught by Professor. He welcomed me to University of Nairobi as a first-year student. The only thing that he was shocked about my person is when I told him the school I had come from. He wondered whether I never knew that there was a school called Alliance and why I never went to Alliance. But,
correction, Senator, not a school.
There
was the school called Alliance.
Yes, but happy to see you, Prof. And we are really going to benefit, you know, from your presentation. I hope there will be some written memo that you will leave behind that will assist us. Now, we are where we are because we are a country on crossroads. We are trying to find a solution to some of the problems we are facing. Just like the people who wrote the American Constitution in 1787 were trying to address the concerns of the 17 states that were trying to secede. And we need to get solutions that can fit into our own unique local circumstances. Now, on the issue of IEBC, you know we have had two scenarios. IBC commissioners picked through the IPPG model and the one of 207.